Did you see the stylish?
Welcome to the Young IPA Podcast. I'm James, this is Pete.
G'day, everyone.
It is the 30th of January. This is episode 143. Loaded show coming up. We've got Evan Mulholland right here with us. We're going to be talking about the top story of the day from the IPA's perspective. We've also got Matt Ridley on the show. One of my favourite interviews we've ever done. Maybe my favourite interview. It's like everything that Pete and I talk about and we like talking about, and it makes you feel so good about the direction of the world and where things are going, and it was just awesome.
Oh, no, exactly right. You're about to ask me what my favourite thing was. That was my favourite thing.
Yep.
One of our best interviews ever. Also, a bloke just trying to get to work with his strides off, which we'll talk about towards the end.
That's not Matt Ridley.
That is not Matt Ridley.
That is not Matt Ridley.
That is a separate thing.
All right. So we got Evan here. We want to talk about this story because obviously, like, the whole world is talking about two things, which is Kobe Bryant's death and also coronavirus. Neither of which are exactly Young IPA podcast stories.
We can't imagine.
But Evan, we do want to talk about this story because this is something that's was just fun. It's been a tough week from a few perspectives, but this is just fun. So, Evan, Malcolm Turnbull on the bushfires. Why don't you tell us where this started?
Well, over the last couple of weeks, Malcolm Turnbull has really piped up on climate change and the need to address climate change because of the bushfires. So he's ceded to the media narrative that it's all Scott Morrison's fault. He's had a big go at Scott Morrison, and he actually went to Davos, the big sort of international climate conference, and was swanning around there, doing interviews with the BBC. He did an interview with The Guardian as well, and here in Australia, basically saying that Scott Morrison should take advantage of this crisis and act radically on climate change to phase out coal completely from Australia, which would just be an absolute economic disaster any way you look at it. And he was saying, it's not about these fires are directly linked to climate change, and it shows a trend. Basically parallel with the arguments that the Greens have always made. So I thought, Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister for 3 years, right? And the Greens make this link every single year, and they make this, disgraceful claim during the worst parts of an emergency, like a bushfire. It's all to do with climate change, and this shows a need for climate action, which is completely wrong, first of all, but frankly insensitive.
So what did Evan, the Undertaker Mulholland, decide to do about that?
Is that what we're going with, The Undertaker? Because I like it.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it.
To the shadow realm.
So I thought he's definitely said it. Like, the Greens have come out at one point when he was Prime Minister and said it. So I simply just hopped onto his website, and I used the search button on Malcolm Turnbull's website. You can go to his website right now for those watching or listening. And I typed in Malcolm Turnbull, climate change, Greens. And it came up with a transcript of a press conference he gave in 2018 when terrible Tathra bushfires happened. I think about 60 or 70 homes were destroyed. And Richard Dinantale came out and said this shows the need to act on climate change. The Prime Minister should do more. And Malcolm Turnbull was actually quite right in saying no particular event can be linked to climate change, whether it be a flood or a fire, or strong winds, and he was disappointed in the Greens for politicising an event like bushfires.
So you see these two things, and you decide, I'm going to take this to a journalist. We're going to get this written up.
Yeah, so I kicked it around, so to speak, to a few journalists, and it was on Sky News, it was in the Australian, it was all over the place, and I think really highlighted the hypocrisy of Malcolm Turnbull, and Gideon posted about it on Twitter, which got heaps of traction as well. So it was good to see it, really exposed for what it was.
Yeah. So do you reckon this is Turnbull changing his mind, or we have this, and then we've also got Tanya Plibersek in the quiz later in the show, which is this. A politician's just politicians, and they'll just say whatever it takes to, just support the party line, or just get things over the edge, or just protect their own interests.
Yeah. I mean, Malcolm Turnbull was right in 2018 with what he was saying. Now, he's simply just, it's all about legacy for him. It's all about the fact that he got done over again, because of his, climate policies, because of the neg, technically. I think he got done over by his own incompetence, but that's a different story. And this is, trying to craft the narrative that he was the one who wanted to act on climate change, and it was the dinosaurs in the Liberal Party that, brought him down. Yet, he had people nodding behind him. He was saying exactly the same things that Scott Morrison is saying now, that it was all about sort of hazard reduction and fuel load that needs to be worked on. And he's now that he's not in a position to do something, criticising Scott Morrison for saying exactly the same thing as the bloke who is in a position to do something. Like, it's just ridiculous.
So now this is what you love doing this stuff, right? This is your bread and butter. You love being, either cutting people down or being a kingmaker in the Australian political scene. That's why we call you the Undertaker. Is this the most fun you've had at work, or is there something even more fun than this?
Oh, it was pretty fun to see. There's been a few other occasions where we've knocked out a poll. I love the Australia Day polls, as we saw last week, and seeing something go from an idea that's talked about in the office to the front pages is a great part of my job, and I love doing it.
All right, so rank the people that have been more annoying. Out of the two people that were Prime Minister and now just seem to be just annoying people, Kevin Rudd and Malcolm Turnbull, who has been more annoying out of office?
Good question.
Malcolm Turnbull is really, punching for that gold medal.
Yeah.
I'd almost say they're equal. You've got a situation now where we've got. Let's compare our four most recent former prime ministers. You've got, Julia Gillard, and whatever you thought about her in office, she's handled herself pretty gracefully post-politics, doesn't
100%.
Get involved in domestic politics.
Yep.
A chair of Beyond Blue, helping poor countries get and people get access to education. Tony Abbott literally fighting fires for the last few months. And both Malcolm Turnbull and Kevin Rudd tweeting about climate change and tweeting about News Corp.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's all.
And both living in New York or hopping between New York and Australia.
Yeah, it's just like, it's hard for me because you go, Malcolm Turnbull's currently probably louder just because of the fact that he still has more influence. But there's just a special level of disappointing in Kevin Rudd writing letters to Jacobin magazine. It's like how just self-policing he is on just, typing his name into Twitter, just figuring out what comes out, just any mention going, right, that's today's morning. We are going to tell Jacobin magazine who's boss around here.
Yeah.
So I reckon, Turnbull's more influential, but Kevin Rudd's just a bit more like, dude, what are you doing? Pete, what do you reckon?
Malcolm Turnbull's more recent, and also, Evan's a big coalition man, so he'd feel more about Malcolm Turnbull because he took over his party. Whereas Kevin Rudd, you always expect the other team to be
They're both
annoying.
Just, old men yelling at clouds.
Yes.
Basically at the moment.
And in lockstep with each other. All right, so sweet. So people can read Gideon's article, which went off. Gideon's article on our website. Everyone really liked that article, so go read that at ipa.org.au. Evan, thanks for coming on, and we're going to have the Grunt the Pig Freedom Snort play you off, which is quickly becoming one of my favourite things we do here.
Excellent.
Thanks,
guys.
Undertaker.